Hey, how's it going? Young June here, and today we're going to be going over some array prototype methods. Today we're going to be going through map, filter, and reduce, but in this particular video we're just going to be focusing on map. Map is a really great way to iterate over collections of data because it never ever changes our source of truth. That's one thing you always want to be mindful of as a developer is when you're mapping through a collection of things that you always keep your source of truth the source of truth. And so what map will do for us is it will take our array of information and based on whatever change we want, it will take those changes and funnel them into a new array. If you're just getting started with JavaScript, like this is a iterator, an enumerable that you want to stick to and use often. The array prototype functions in JavaScript are really great, and map is one that you're going to be using a lot. So I think if you are struggling with array prototypes and you're struggling to learn how to use them, this is going to be one that you're going to want to learn really well. And so what I've provided for you today is a JS enums thing. It's a repo that's on my GitHub, and it's going to have all of these like particular test folders. What you want to do is install first. So let's run npm install. While that's installing, let's go and talk about the commands we have available to us. Npm run test -all is going to run all of your tests. And if you run npm test and then the name of the test folder, that's going to go ahead and run that particular test. We're going to be using this command a lot today. Now, one thing I did want to say is if you are just getting into JavaScript and you're learning ES5, today we're going to be using ES6. ES6 gives us a lot of niceties. It's going to give us a spread operator, it's going to give us an arrow function, it's going to give us a bunch of different ways to declare variables, let and const being some of those things. And we're going to talk about that today, which is awesome. And I really think that it really makes JavaScript a lot more robust. And so if you don't know how to use it, today is a really great chance to learn. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and open up the test suite. And I'm going to open it up in Atom, and here we are. Now we already have one test that's unskipped and it's working. So if I run npm test map, it should run that particular test, and this first one should pass. And so if we are looking at what we're doing here, we have a const array of words or names. We are mapping through those words, and for every word that's coming through, we are to uppercasing it. Notice how we assign the value of the map or the return value of the map to a variable. Now, why a variable? Well, the reason why you return it to a variable is because this is what we would call an expression. An expression is a evaluation that returns a value, and that is assigned to a variable. This is a huge thing. And something you should take advantage of often. And we see here that in our test, we're expecting this uppercase words to equal this expectation array, right? Mika, June, Brenda, and Steve. All the names being uppercased. Now, if we move on to this next one, we're going to kind of do the same thing here. I'm going to say const double numbers. Ooh, actually, it's already nicely taken care of for us, right? So if we look at the double numbers, we're taking the numbers, we're mapping through it, we're taking one number, and I want to double that number, so I'm going to times that number by 2. Notice how I don't have a return here, right? I'm going to talk about that if you're new to ES6. So that should pass. If I were to write this same thing in ES5, I'd be like function, take in the number, right? And then with that number, I want to return the number times 2. If I run this, this should pass, right? And you have to explicitly define that return. What's really nice with ES6 is if you negate these brackets, right, you can essentially get rid of the return and turn it into one line. The one thing we do have to change is I got to get rid of this keyword function. So let's get rid of that. And let's go ahead and hit it with some arrows. Now I can make this even smaller by removing this bracket or these parens because I'm only receiving one argument and I'm only using one argument. So now I've even made it smaller. So if I run this, it should work. Passes. Sweet. So let's go ahead and get this next one. Let's unskip it. So it should square the number. So what I'm going to do here is I'm looking at the test on line 27 and it says square numbers. So it says const square numbers is equal to numbers.map. I'm taking the a number and I'm going to times that number by itself. It should pass. And it does. Awesome. Let's move on to the next one here. Alright, cool. So we're looking to reverse our strings now. So if I look at this, it's looking for reverse strings. So what I'm going to say here is const reverse strings is equal to our strings array. I'm going to map through that strings array. I'm going to take every string and do some stuff to it, right? Now, ideally, I would love to call reverse, but reverse only works on arrays. There's nothing that we have on the string prototype to reverse the strings. So I'm going to have to do some fancy smancy stuff here. I'm going to have to be really great if I took the string, or the name, really, the name of the person that we have, take the name, split it into an array of characters, and then reverse the array, and then join it back together. That's what I want to do. So let's take the name. So let's say const, we'll say split, reverse split array. Because I'm going to take the name, and then just split it. Maybe, yeah. So reverse split array. So I'll say name dot split, or dot, yep, split. And then I'm going to reverse that, just like that. And then I'm going to say const, really not a const. See, this is inside of a block here, so I'm going to say let, and I'm going to say let reversed joined equals the reversed split array dot join. And I want to return the reversed joined. Now this is a long way to do it, but I think one thing we do gain is the readability. And actually, let's join like this. Let's join each character. And it passes. Now, one would say, hey, June, you don't have to do that. You could literally just do this. And I would agree with you. Right now, it's on one line. And yeah, you may look super cool. Hold on. Apparently not. Oh, because I didn't reverse it. Right? This is gonna work, but the problem is like you lose like the readability, right? Like you're just like, okay, split, reverse, join, and that is totally true. This is totally gonna work, but for you, arguably the most important person in this equation, are gonna forget what you're doing at some point down the road, right? It might make more sense to, even though I put this on, I've added 2 extra lines, it's more readable. So if you're still learning, I really think this is a really good way to communicate what you want. And really, even when you're, I mean, you should always be learning, so this applies to everyone. Like that readability factor, that developer empathy is really, really important. Let's move on to the next one. Should add a key of swag and the value of true to every object. So one thing that I love about map is that it's constantly returning a new version of the thing that we are changing. We're never really manipulating our array in place. We take the changes and we make a new copy of that array. That is typically what you want to do with JavaScript. And the reason why you want to do that is because everything in JavaScript is a reference. And if I change or manipulate something in place, I risk manipulating or changing or contaminating my source of truth. For instance, cool. Let's say I say const person is equal to a thing with a name. June. Cool. Actually, this person's already been defined. So if I call person, there's Young June. Let's go ahead and let's say like const newest person right? And what if I wanted to add like a key of lit here, right? Because I have name and I have a swag key. Apparently that's true, right? And I'm gonna say newest person is equal to person. Right, so if I call newest person, I'm gonna get that. Now if I change this and I say, what if I just change swag? Let's just change the value of swag. I say swag is false, right? So I call newest person, right? That's kind of to be expected, right? Now, but if I call person, the problem is that has also changed, right? That's kind of a bummer. So what you want to do is actually, if you want to make a change, you want to make a new copy of person, right? So if I say const swag true is equal to object.assign, and basically what object.assign does is its first argument is the target object you'd like to manipulate, and the next thing is the value that you would like, the object you'd like to copy over. So here I want to copy over person, right? Now what I want to do is change the value of swag. So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say swag is equal to true, because it's going to read from right to left, right? So this is going to copy over here, and then this is going to copy over and override whatever values I have. So if I call, if I do that and I call swag true, there it is, and I call person, and they are the same. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I want to do is I want to take say const new objects is equal to array of objects, and I want to map through that. I want to take each person, and I want to return an object.assign of each person. I'm going to pass in that target object, and I'm going to pass through the copy that I'd like to make, which is going to be that person. Now what I want to add to that person is a key of swag, and so because this target object is never really going to change, they're all going to have a key of swag. I'm going to say swag true here. Now this should work. Let's see. Boom. Bum-ba-da-bum. Awesome. All right. It looks like we are now trying to return an array of last character strings. So let's go ahead and do that. So here I'm going to say a little const last letters is equal to names.map. I'm going to take in a name, right? Now the name or the letter that I want to return is the last thing, and there's a prototype, a string, not a string prototype, but a method on the string called slice. So I'll say name.slice, and I can pass in where I want to end, and I'm going to say -1, which is the end of our string, and that should go ahead and work for us. Boom. Awesome. Again, you can make this even larger or more readable. If I say const or let last letter equals name.slice -1, and then return last letter. It passes. Cool. All right, let's go over this last one. Tends to be kind of the hard one. It looks like here that I want an array of objects instead of one large object, and it looks like we are adding some stuff to the object. We're adding a key. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing this is that if you have the keys, you have the value. You have the keys, you have the value. That's how an object works. You can't have one without the other. You need both. So what I can do is I can reference the object keys to get those values, right? So ES6 gives us a function called object.keys. So if I say const object keys is equal to object.keys, and then let's go ahead and pass in a large object. Let's just go ahead and log object keys, just so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I run this test, I should see this log here, and looks like we get those keys, right? We get the key 1, key 2, key 3. Now if I want to grab this value, I'm gonna have to map through this array, right? And then I'm gonna have to take the particular key that I'm getting and reference this large object to get this value. I have the key, I have the value. So let's go ahead and say const array of people is equal to the object keys dot map, right? And now I'm taking in a single key. Really, that single key is actually not a single key. That's going to become our ID, right? If we look at our object, that is an ID. And so I have that. And what I want to do is I want to object.assign, right? And here I'm going to pass in my target, right? And what I want to pass through now is the large object and the ID, right? Which is our particular key. Now, I want the ID to be in here. And one thing you can say is ID is equal to ID, just like that, and that should work. Now, one thing we can do also is get rid of that and use destructuring in JavaScript to be like, hey, this is a single ID. So whatever the ID is, whatever that variable is, that will be assigned as a key and its value. So it's basically doing this for us. So if I run this now, it's going to pass. Now, there's a better way to do this. And one thing I don't like about this particular implementation is the fact that every loop we are going outside of our scope to reference an object. And what would be better is if I had the key and the value pair, right? So if I comment this out, instead of calling this object keys, I call this object entries, right? Or maybe I just called it obj entries. And instead of object.keys, I'm going to pass through here entries. And let's just go ahead and log this. Let's see what it gives us. Cool. So as you see here, we get an array. And the first index in that array is our key, and the second index in that array is our value, right? So I'm getting both of those things inside of an array, which is super awesome. Now what I can do is I can use a map to get through that. So what I can say here, instead of console logging, let's just say const array of people is equal to obj entries, right? I'm going to map through that. And map typically takes a value, and our value, what's different about this is I'm going to pass you an array. And I'm going to say ID is the first thing, and the object is the second thing, right? Or not the object, the person is our second thing, right? So let's just make sure this is correct. Let's log all these things. Let's say ID is equal to the ID I'm passing through, right? And then the person is the person I'm passing through. And we get a failing test, but look at what I get. I get all these beautiful things, right? So now what I want to do is I want to object.assign that, and what I can say is object.assign, pass in the ID, and then copy over the person. And that should work. Ooh. Bum, ba, da, bum, and passes. Awesome. And that is a way to solve this. I'm sure there are a bunch of ways that may make more sense to you. Now, obviously, this object entries, object keys thing, if that's feeling a little wonky for you, I would encourage you to continue to look at the documentation. I like to look at MDN. MDN does such a great job of like walking me through that. So if I go to object.keys and I type in MDN, they have really, really great examples about what these particular things do. And as a developer, that is a huge part of our learning, is just hopping into documentation and looking at like what it's actually going to give you. And so I think if you continue to practice this, continue to practice just a little bit of ES6 and even look into what is let and what is const and why aren't we using var, I really, really think that's going to be beneficial for you in your learning. With that being said, this is Map. I hope that was helpful for you. Feel free to continue to watch this and go over. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me on Slack or leave a comment below. Thanks again, and I will see you soon.